Hey YouTube, here going to talk about things going on in the world around us. And actually, I should say, hey Internet, because I'm on a whole bunch of other video streaming platforms. But I'm here to talk about something very important. Today, we're here to talk about mass shootings, gun control, kind of heavy stuff, but more importantly, gun control. But in a nutshell, there was a shooting in a grocery store in Boulder, Colorado, and President Joe Biden did not waste any time responding to it. And let me just share that video while I'm here. This is how Joe Biden responded.
One thing I do know enough to say on is in terms of what's happened there. While we're still waiting for more information regarding the shooter, his motive, the weapons he used, the guns, the magazines, the weapons, the modifications that apparently have taken place to those weapons that are involved here, I don't need to wait another minute, let alone an hour, to take common sense steps that will save the lives in the future and to urge my colleagues in the House and Senate to act. We can ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines in this country once again. I got that done when I was a senator. It passed. It was law for the longest time. And it brought down these mass killings. We should do it again. We can close the loopholes in our background check
Okay, I'm going to stop there. So let's just respond to that really quick. From the beginning, Joe Biden says, I don't care what kind of weapon was used. We should ban assault rifles. We should ban assault rifles. I did it before I could do it again. One at a time. Don't care what kind of weapon was used. You know what kind of weapon was used in this shooting? Pistol. A pistol. So banning assault rifles will do nothing to have stopped, would have done nothing to have stopped this shooting. He says close the loopholes. He bought it. The shooter bought it in a gun store. So the loopholes closing would do nothing to have stopped the shooting. Another quick thing about the shooting, though, not very many people are even mentioning the motivation of the shooter. They never do. They just kind of sweep it under the rug because guns are always a problem, right? Well, check this out. Less than a month ago, the U.S. bombed Syria. Now, a Syrian immigrant shoots up a grocery store. But nobody is talking about that. Yes, less than a month ago, Joe Biden indiscriminately and without congressional approval bombed Syria, killing civilians and everything, which of course is an act of war. And let's not even forget to mention that Syria and Russia are allies. So yeah, poking a bear that could potentially start World War III, that's never a good idea. But let's move on to the tail end of what Joe Biden said. Did it before, and we can do it again. Maybe he didn't do it before. Joe Biden was involved in the authoring of the Brady Bill, which led to the banning of fully automatic weapons. When Joe Biden says, I banned assault weapons before, he's not lying, because that was the initial definition of assault weapons. Assault weapons are fully automatic weapons. But assault weapons are a media coined term, and assault weapons are not used at all to define weapons by manufacturers. Not a single gun manufacturer uses the term assault weapon or assault rifle. Now, because the media coined the term and they continue to move the goalposts, assault weapon means any semi-automatic rifle that has a magazine, and has a pistol grip. Now, that's a lot. A lot. Over half of all gun owners own an AR-15. By the media's definition, that's an assault rifle. For what regard? I don't know. It's just a semi-automatic rifle. and there's some data to back this up somewhere, but it was found by the Obama administration when he really wanted to curb mass shootings, found that most mass shootings are done with pistols. So why are they going after assault weapons? Now, on to the tail end of what we watched. Joe Biden's calling on the House to really go after weapons. We'll go after guns in the House. What he's talking about is there's a bill on the House floor right now, which I wrote about in an article that I will share in the description below. And that article is here, HR 127 Gun Control Bill, Insanity on Steroids, in Project Give, shit.com. This bill is very scary. I have another video talking about this bill, but this bill, let me just present the nefariousness of this bill's authoring before I talk about the actual nefarious of this bill. This bill was named the Sabika Shika bill. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She is a victim of a shooting at a high school in May of 2018. This bill did not make it to the House floor until January 4th of 2021. So this bill took 3 years almost to write. Really? Okay. What I actually think was happening is they were waiting for a Democratic president to give it some attention. So you're welcome to read this article yourself, because I do get into a lot of the historical details behind the author of the bill, Sheila Jackson Lee, who is Hail Marying for some sort of historical power stance on the history of in politics. But let's get into the bill itself. HR 127. So here's what's really scary. So Section 2, licensing of firearm and ammunition possession and registration of firearms. So this is already a thing. You already have to register your weapon with the state. That's no biggie. But now what is required to own a firearm as well as ammunition in your home, if this bill were to pass the House and the Senate, is a license. And this license will have an annual renewal. Well, I don't know what the fees are going to be. That might be a state issue. But in order to renew, you must also take an annual 8-hour course in firearm safety. That's a big deterrent. And a lot of people have presented the idea of gun licensing with the state in order to help curb gun violence as an idea. But why it doesn't quite line up is like, you can own a car without driving it. You don't need a license to own a car. You need a license to use a car. So that's different than having a license to own a gun. Not quite the same thing. And with driving, you, according per this bill as an example, you don't have to take an annual test to continue to drive. Yet people 10 times, or maybe even more than that, I don't have the exact stats, die in car accidents every year. Yet you basically have to take a driving test once in your lifetime, unless you drive until you're so old you need to really take a test again per your vision limitations or ailments of old age setting in. So that's scary, but it gets worse. Additional to licensing, you will also be required to get insurance for every gun you own. So I own 4 guns. I gonna have to get insurance for each one of those guns, even if I don't use them? And they, of course, are gonna go after military style weapon again. By what definition is that? I don't know. Um, military style weapon, what does that mean? Again, it's the same as like assault weapon, and they were wise in the bill to use the correct term, military style. I guess it's anything with a pistol grip, anything with a detachable magazine, and anything that's a semi-automatic rifle. Which is interesting about that though is like there are tube-fed lever action rifles, which shoot just as fast as a semi-automatic rifle, which have more bullets than what's legal in certain states like California. You can only have 10 bullets in your magazine, but there are tube-fed rifles with 16, maybe even 18 bullets in it. So what happens there? Uh, Here's another scary thing: psychological evaluation. Yeah. So in order to own a license, which grants you the ability to own a gun, you will need to get a psychological evaluation, which will decide if you're able to own a gun. Psychological evaluation. That sounds really draconian. In the state of California currently, if you um, ever get arrested for domestic violence, or if you are showing suicidal tendencies, that's a big red flag, and you get a knock on your door, and you probably have to turn in your guns. But prior to owning a gun, having to get a psychological evaluation is I imagine this something like this will be abused in states like California, New York, cities like Chicago, where it's already really hard to own a gun if you're not a criminal. So that's another big hurdle that they're setting in place. And then hypothetically, you fail the evaluation. Hypothetically, you end up with a psychologist who doesn't, like to grant ownership. What's going to happen is the SWAT team going to come to your front door and demand you turn in your guns? Well, according to this bill, if you get your license suspended, which it has language in that about it, if your license expires and you don't renew, you get a $50,000 fine if you hang on to your guns. And if you don't pay that $50,000 fine, you get 10 years in jail. And then the fine goes up to $100,000. Yeah, that's brutal. That's brutal. That's just the deepest darkness elements of the aforementioned bill, but you can look at that bill yourself, and that's in the description below. It gets worse. I promise you, it gets worse. So Joe Biden, of course, is calling on the House and the Senate, but he's also talking to the Supreme Court, and Jen Plansky, whatever her name is, said he's considering executive action on guns. Obviously, he can't have any executive action on guns because it's in the Second Amendment. It's like an executive action he's already done executive action on the First Amendment with removing the words China and the words virus and put together in a sentence. But he's considering executive action on guns. And everything too, he's talking about the Supreme Court, and he wants for the Supreme Court to remove any barriers from police doing warrantless searches for guns. So hypothetically, worst case scenario, bill passes. Nobody wants to get the license. They don't get the license. What, are there just SWAT teams across America going to be coming to the front doors of gun owners? almost 50%, 48% of the American people owns a gun. Half of gun owners in this country have an AR-15, which I'm sure by the definition of likes of HR 127 or whatever Joe Biden's going to cram through via executive action, yeah, that's going to come up to turn into something being illegal for anyone in the United States to own because it looks scary. Functionally, it's a semi-automatic rifle. It means you pull the trigger once, it shoots once. 99% of pistols do that. And again, just like what happened in Boulder, Colorado, and Obama's DHS did a study on this and found most shootings are done with pistols. So why are they going after rifles? Pistols are next. That's just the obvious what's going to happen. Many people have stated the line in the sand. The line in the sand is guns, especially with states like Texas. They are not going to put up with a president who's going to tell the American people they can't own a gun. That's a line in the sand. And when stuff like this happens and speeches like this are done so unapologetically, meanwhile, there's 3,000 people crossing the border a day, being dropped off in small towns of 2,000 people, like in Arizona, and how Kamala Harris is just laughing off the immigration crisis, and how Joe Biden has just put a gag order on any border patrol agent even talking about this with the media. While that's going on, Joe Biden comes and says, "Oh, we're going to go after guns because that's a big issue in this country." Yes, there are gun violence problems in certain cities, no doubt. Chicago, Detroit, New York City, all these cities have major gun violence issues. But in each of those cities, it's basically illegal to own a gun. And it doesn't work out well for them. But in closing, it's starting to make sense why in Washington, D.C., there's still a big barbed wire fence around it. And there's still tens of thousands of National Guard troops sleeping in parking garages and getting food poisoning, trying to protect these assholes. Because they're doing shit like this. Just to reiterate, within a month of the president illegally bombing a country, or for years and years and years and years, there's been great suffering, and now he just pisses on the country and kills civilians, and just for whatever reason, who knows. And then a refugee from that country then shoots up a grocery store. The response isn't, hey, maybe I shouldn't have bombed that country. The response is, hey, we should take guns away from the American people because we have a mass shooting problem. I agree mass shootings are bad, but I don't agree the solution is to start banning types of guns for legal gun ownership. Sure, there can be hurdles. There can be background checks. There can be all those things. Because I agree that it shouldn't be a walk in the park to just walk into a gun store and walk out because with a gun. Because I agree with certain things. Waiting period's not a terrible thing. But HR 127 is a monstrosity. Joe Biden's an idiot, and the American people aren't going to put up with it. That's it for me, and I will catch you guys on the next one.